Hello, everybody, and here we are again, the session of the Awakening as Love retreat with myself, Grace Bubeck, and with Susanne Marie. Welcome, Susanne Marie.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. Bye, everybody. So nice to be here with you, Grace, and with everyone that I can feel, even if I can't see you.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. So Susanne Marie is a spiritual mentor, and she had an awakening experience years ago, and took quite a while to really integrate that and, as she says, embody that. And she started teaching maybe 2 years back. I'm not sure. I got to know her over the internet on Facebook, where she's been posting very interesting things. And recently, she's posted a lot on the role of feelings in awareness in human life. And there's been quite a lively discussion on this topic. And as she told me also, there was a similar discussion at the recent SAND conference, Science and Non-Duality Conference in California. So Susanne will bring that topic alive for us. This question of what is the role of feeling. And Susanne, I'm not sure that you're aware of some of the discussions that have been going on during sessions in the comment thread. Because some of the teachers on this retreat, especially Muji, there's a very clear sense of feelings just not being worth taking all that seriously. Usually his instruction to people is to just watch them, but it's not it's not worth spending all that much time on. So my sense, and then there were other teachers who had, suggested things like psychotherapy if needed. And so my sense is there's quite a kind of alive argument, inner, discussion, outer discussion, that there's something that's brewing here that's quite juicy.
I would say,
so.
Yeah. That's
yes,
a good way. It's juicy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why don't you start us off with what you have to say on that topic, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't feel in any kind of conflict in regards to Muji or any of the spiritual teachers in terms of how they're teaching how to meet feelings, how to be with thoughts, and because I feel like there is the right time and the right place for all kinds of teachings to come into anyone's life. And there was a time in my own life when there was a really strong desire, and it was actually out of my hands, for a desire for wanting to return back to the transcendent, back to spirit, back to the space that we are free of form and free of content, and so it's like this backward step they actually talk about in Zen, where you take this backward step out of life and in order to know what you are in truth. So I feel like there's just this divine intelligence at work, guiding people towards what it is that they're needing, and that the people who are perhaps enjoying the lively discussions or the juicy discussions on allowing feeling to be, or how to be with feeling, is that's the right thing for them to be doing, at that time. So there's just a time for everything, and I have this innate trust in where people are going and where they're needing to go. And sometimes people contact me and work with me in regards to having had a taste of the transcendent and having maybe it's not all the way done, where perhaps there's still some seeking that's still happening, but there's something there for them that they are confused about in regards to how to be with what's going on within them, what's going on in their lives, how they meet others, and going and perhaps for a while stepping back into the emptiness or the presence or awareness works for a while, and then sometimes it just stops working. And so I have people.
What do you mean? Can I just ask immediately? What do you mean by it stops working? Can you be more specific about that?
There is a time for that awareness, to be able to enter into awareness free of content to the point where everything disappears. And for me that worked for a while. What I mean is that it wasn't just like a strategy, but it was something that was really deeply wanted and needed, and in terms of understanding deeply what we are, free of all this beliefs and content and story and so on. And then there's just this kind of natural re-engagement with life that starts to happen for most people at some point, because that's not just a play. For me, it's a part of awakening, but it's not the whole complete awakening. What I call part of the embodied awakening is like stepping back into life, and it's not so much like the me steps back. It's more like life free, that it knows itself free of content, steps back into life in order to know itself as content, in order to know the other 50% of what it is. And that is the emptiness is form and form is emptiness, kind of full circle teaching. And that's the teaching that is alive and true for me to be sharing with others, because that's been my experience. And we usually teach what it is that is our experience, and that's, I feel, how it should be. So and I'm not saying that one has to wait for the full awareness of emptiness to fully take place in order to be able to learn how to be with the content. It just has to do with where is intelligence moving in the moment. What is it needing? There's no delineation point. It's before, during, and after the so-called, thing that we call awakening, realization, understanding the truth of what we are. That where learning how to be present to ourselves and not move from difficult things that may be arising inside is super helpful for learning to how to live one's life.
Yes.
So it's not like I feel like there needs, for me it's not, there's one better way, or in terms of what should be taught. It's this natural intelligence that's guiding where people are going in any given moment. And sometimes the teachings of being in the transcendent, perhaps it's just not the right, it's done to a certain degree. Another thing wants to happen. Life is asking for integration, Because everything is divine. See, the way that I see it is that everything is God, and that includes feeling, and the topic is the heart of feeling beyond inner division. And within feeling, and and I'd like to get to this at some point with our conversation in terms of the difference between being in story and being lost in story, and then deeper than that, feeling, the sinking down of story from the mind to the heart, and then beyond story into the sensations. And then when you keep going down and you land in sensation, right there is stillness. You can find the transcendent right within form when we allow ourselves to not turn away and to really make a full stop. Right there, right there. Within experience is non-experience. Right within form is the formless.
Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful way of putting it. And in fact, in the previous session with Canella, Michelle Myers, she had a fairly lengthy exchange with somebody who came onto the hangout, and that was really what was explored. This how consciousness, how awareness is present with all that is form, with all that shows up, sensation, emotion, thought. And yes, there's none of that which is form prevents the formless from being present. But we think that it does. There's a duality that gets acted out somehow, that if we're present to form, then there can't be the formless. If we pay too much attention to the form, there can't be the formless.
Right. Yep. There's a,
and I just wanted to say, and of course people do get, when somehow the awareness hasn't taken very strong hold, people do get caught up in just the form. They do get caught up in identification with feeling, with thought, with emotion, with sensation.
Right. And even with people who are getting caught in that, there's the right timing for the teachings of the beyond, which I do point to in my work with people. It's completely guided by what it is someone's needing, because I needed it myself to really be steeping in the beyond. And even with one person who's really still in this return phase into the beyond, there are moments when there is guidance that's needed into how to meet something that's going on, because it just won't go away. And I don't keep pointing back to absence to make something go away. Oftentimes the right medicine, like a good doctor, the right medicine will be to go towards it, enter into it, be with it. Something that actually, if it would have been lovely if we'd been taught this as children of how to do. It's actually emotional intelligence versus, just regarding awakening. It's learning how to be just a healthy, functioning human being. People are not taught. We're not taught for the most part. Innocently, our parents don't know how to do it for themselves, how to turn towards difficult emotions and feelings, and and so that continues. And then when we become, we start going after a spiritual creating a spiritual identity, but with the hopes of using it to actually undo ourselves, to you know um, along with that come a lot of beliefs around what it looks like to be whatever it is that we think we're going to be: enlightened, awakened, free. And so a lot of the beliefs have to come along with that, like, oh, you're going to be free of a lot of the things that are actually part of being human, feeling
Yes.
the difficult feelings along with the pleasant feelings. And so the only reason that they are considered difficult is because they're there's a lack of knowing how to be with them. Because really, when you go into anything that feels difficult, any kind of tension or tightness or fear, sadness, all the things that we label as difficult, that we, also often with a spiritual identity think they don't belong with spirituality, this ideal that we might have. So it's a maturation process of learning that actually, hopefully, some people will hear that from somewhere, that God includes everything, and that it's only our minds that put it in a hierarchical model of what is, more valued and what is more spiritual than another thing. Sadness and peace, all these things, joy and fear. I mean, I understand it. I understand why we would want to lean more towards one end of the spectrum. It just feels better. But the thing is that as time goes on, as we start to really embody, which is to allow spirit to really occupy the body, internally sink in, like descend from the awakened energy, just starts to occupy and fill itself back up. And it's a movement of love to like turn towards everything that it has been imagined that it's not allowed, everything that has been neglected, everything that has been denied. And so the sifting out process happens, and what happens is this indiscriminate aspect of spirit itself, of presence itself. It does not have a value judgment for itself. So it turns towards these difficult things and embraces them and level and says, this too is part of the divine, and it has a certain quality to it, a certain feeling to it. And when that's done, it's not, when it occurs in that way, it's so much different than being lost in concept, lost in thoughts, lost in story, a polarized sense of myself and this pain, myself and this sadness. This merging happens where it becomes really, truthfully, life, love, presence, embraces this thing that it doesn't polarize itself anymore. It doesn't create two out of. And so then this what happens is alchemy, a beautiful alchemy and embrace. Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. So, the way you speak it resonates very strongly here. And, it really speaks of a process of integration. And there's a recognition, that there is a time when that clarity has to be there of what is true, what is the formless, and what is form, and that distinction somehow, it really needs to settle in. It needs to somehow take seat. And once it's taken seat, and during that time, it's so important to be clear that there's such a need for clarity about what is ultimately real, what is ultimately true, and what is thought, what is feeling, what is emotion, what is. And yes, that is ultimately true too. I mean, it's all included ultimately, but somehow developmentally, the waking up process happens in time, and developmentally there's a time when there need to be very clear distinctions. And so that's what I saw on the YouTube comment thread also. There were people who had to make very clear distinctions, and 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 they got a bit categorical with those.
Yeah.
And 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 then there's a time of integration. I mean, my own teacher tends to call that more like just the deepening of awakening. And that is actually a time of just including everything, everything, everything,
Yeah.
everything. This too, this too, this, all. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, nothing wants to be left behind.
Yes.
It's consciousness itself. It's the intelligence of consciousness, that re-enters itself. It re-enters form, the body, the space around, and sees itself everywhere, and knows itself as not separate. And so it's a movement of love to keep saying yes. This too. And that goes for feeling. It goes for everything. And it's once that clarity has been reached that you spoke about, the settling down process, it's like a space, a presence, or whatever word you want to use. Consciousness moves to the foreground and really takes seat. It takes seat and occupies, and things fall away. This beautiful, grace-filled kind of dissolution process, takes place, and that can take months, years, whatever it is. It has its own intelligence in that regard, and there's no need to rush anything. It's all perfectly orchestrated. And then and then it's just like the another part of life wakes up and goes, oh, what you're talking about, the deepening. What about everything else? I'm that as well. I'm not only that, the presence, the empty, beautiful, unborn nature of reality, but it just starts to filter back into and fill up the space that of everything that it removed itself from in order to remember itself. It starts to occupy that space again with awakeness rather than unconscious, sleepy energy of being glued and stuck with identification. And it enters, it occupies itself with awakeness, and that includes every aspect of your body, every aspect of your life, every part of your body, every aspect of your life, all aspects. And that's an ongoing kind of realization. And it is like a continual, not only a yes, but like a movement of occupation where awake energy, conscious awake energy, the presence, it's not like presence is continually arising with entering into form. So it doesn't like go back to sleep within form. It's like it knows itself as both. So it moves forward as awakeness within form.
Yes.
And it keeps like it's this kind of this movement of energy of what else is there. And maybe when it's been done here for the most part, it happens like the sleepy areas in the world, the collective sleepy areas, the places that even that are difficult, like and hard to understand, you know, war, all these different areas that there's a lot of unconscious sleepy energy, and you know, and it starts to move into these places in an awake way, and it's not like about fixing, it's not about making it all better. This is one thing that's really important to know about this awakening energy, that it's not in order to make everything better. It's to be awake in it.
Yes. Well, it's really, to me, what feels true is that it wants to know itself as that too. It's um, it's like when there is violence, when there is a war, when there is
Mm-hmm.
abuse, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it wants to know itself as that spectrum of all of what is the human experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And when it knows itself as all of that, and it can be seen as all of it,
Mm-hmm.
um, somehow it's like there can arise a realization that maybe that which is very violent or very painful to inflict on others, that's not a choice that wants to be made in the same way eventually. It's like somehow that conscious holding of that has an effect
Mm-hmm.
without there wanting to be an effect, but just
Yeah,
holding it in awareness, in love,
exactly.
makes, it has an effect.
It
It's not
does.
without effect.
Hmm. Because anything that is welcomed and accepted fully and surrendered to with it being as it is without needing to fix it or change it or anything, but just like this awake, loving energy of just this too, and not moving from that place. It has an effect, like you say, by um, kind of osmosis, because if it's putting itself in the center of something, it's going to reverb. Presence, awake energy putting itself in the center of anything, it creates a pocket of freedom right in the middle of a belief, right in the middle of a holding, whether it's here or whether it's in the collective. And that is the byproduct
Hmm.
of being willing to be with what is without needing it to be different.
Hmm.
And then you're right, it has an effect.
Hmm.
And for going in with it as a desire to have an effect, then it's a different kind of, doesn't have the same kind of magic.
No, because actually wanting it to be different, wanting it to change,
Mm.
is a subtle form of going to war with it. I mean, it in itself is a subtle form well, maybe not violence, but
Yeah,
there is yes, it is a form of war.
yeah,
So, the what you call the sleepy energy is the kind of unconscious reaction to,
yeah.
which is what you know, all beings are driven by until somehow awareness dawns, consciousness dawns. And
Mm.
and so when the awareness enters these um, inner spaces or outer places,
Mm-hmm.
where there was just reaction before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it frees it frees that energy, and then other choices are possible. Something happens, like you say, it's alchemical, and it's not quite even predictable what's going to happen, because it's a free movement, so it's not predictable, actually. It'll just do what it'll do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's not up to us. And there's
Mm.
really, this all happens in a mysterious, natural kind of way.
Mm.
What we're talking about here, it's the intelligence of life itself directing, and it knows where to go, it knows what to do, and then that sense of me, the personal sense of me, which I would like to include in the conversation, um, goes goes along for the ride with it, and it gets to have this sense that it's part of it. It's part of the movement, as if there's a choice or something, sometimes. But that personal sense of me, the reason I'd like to include it in the conversation is because oftentimes, and I don't know what's been brought up on the retreat, in regards to this. So I'll just start, just speak to right now, is that is part of the whole. This personal sense of me is something that remains, even with a deep realization, and a deep ongoing abiding realization. And it gets to be known more and more as part and parcel of the whole. So it's just an aspect of the whole. It's a pinpoint reference point where consciousness is narrowed down to a pinpoint, and it's a good thing. It's a necessary thing to be as a functioning human. And along with it, there's a sense of self. Like, even though quite a bit gets thinned out over time, even a sense of, like, you can't even say where the locality is of having a sense of self. You can't even say that there is a me. I can't even find it in the center anymore of any experience. But it's this kind of amorphous sense of me that still coexists simultaneous to awareness of presence. What's aware of presence? And awareness is aware of presence, but there's the me that's in there that gets to have that sense, and it's a perception, it's a clarity, it has maybe some tonality to it. The sense of me is not a problem. The sense of me is a beautiful aspect of God, that it's God having a sense of me, It's not a separate, doesn't create separation unless you believe it, that it shouldn't be there. So when this kind of re-entry happens, a deepening again, of the transcendent, it just kind of does this natural return back into the born, from the unborn back to the born aspect of its nature, because they're one thing. They're really like two sides of a coin. The sense of me gets to be refelt into and known as part of the whole and not a problem. And there's actually this kind of a rising delight that occurs, and a love for all aspects of self, the ones that are still needing attention, the aspect that just always feels the spaciousness, and the sense of me that is like along for the ride. And so that's something I find a lot of people get confused about too. It's like this innocent misunderstandings that come when we start to explore with spirituality, that as if the sense of me is going to completely drop away, and when it doesn't, as if it's some kind of proof that the awakeness is not here right now.
Yes, totally. Mm. it's like that becomes somehow proof that that somebody has lost that sense, that formless awareness.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the sense of me. I find that quite interesting. I didn't know we'd get into this, so go ahead.
It's sometimes I point towards that sense with people that I work with, and it's just interesting, like how relaxing it can be to actually tune into the sense of me. Having a sense of me is not proof that there is a me. Just because you have a sense of me does not mean that you really exist, that there is a center to you.
Yes.
So having a sense of me is just a sense. And it arises with the body. It rises and falls with the body. It's that I amness, that I am, as a pinpoint reference that is part of the self. It's an aspect of the large self. It's the small part, the small self within the larger aspect of self. And it goes along with the exploration that we're doing today in regards to what is it that is noticing everything, including feeling, including sensation, including everything that's arising. What is it that's noticing it? There's this interface. There's a noticing. There's the object of noticing. And then there's something that is noticing. There's noticing, pure awareness, always noticing. There's the object that one is noticing. And then there's this bridge in between the two. And that bridge is the sense of me as God kind of like almost reaching out of itself, touching itself here and here and there. It's all one thing in the end. It's all one thing.
See, it's just as if the sense of me, of I am, gives what is perceived, what is felt, what is experienced, a location.
Yeah.
A location in space and time. Maybe not so much space.
The sense of me is what's functioning and making us be able to operate within space and time.
Yes.
And when it's not believed in so strongly anymore, when the stickiness of the center, I kind of like refer to it as a jelly donut. And, where in the center there's jelly. Mm-hmm. So as awakening takes hold, the realization that you don't really exist, there is no center to you, that you are pure presence. That kind of, the jelly drops out and there's just a hole in the center of a donut. But you still have the periphery of the donut. And the donut is the sense of me. Emptiness exists in the center of every single thing that's arising. And the sense of me starts to thin out over time, but you still, even if the most refined, awakened kind of being walking the planet, see, we still use the word being, it will still have something orbiting this empty donut. It's part of functioning.
Mm.
So the sense of me is an interface with life. And
yes, actually, that's an interesting. That's a good way of putting it. It's that, like you say, it's that bridge. It's that interface where somehow form, the formless becomes form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the formless, it doesn't need to have a sense of me. You know, that back in that emptiness place, but as it re-enters form, as it functioning, it has it knows itself in so many ways.
Mm.
Thoughts appear, sensations and feelings, and all these things, all these human qualities arise. What is it that's noticing that? And as we learn to not make things wrong, you know, that empty center, it doesn't get re-identified. Part of learning how to be with things as they arise is ungluing, unsticking that sense of me that still may believe that it is this and that. And so for a while, going into the formless is the right medicine. And then my experience and some of the people, a lot of the people that I'm working with, and also colleagues and just friends in all kinds of areas, Facebook land, everywhere, there seems to be this kind of like reintegration process back into the world of our humanness, including the person. Like, what is a person? This reference point.
Mm. Mm.
And, you know, there's just a time for everything. There's a time for everything in terms of spiritual, within oneself, and also a spiritual evolution. I mean, this is a different kind of teaching and a different kind of consciousness entering a different aspect of itself from the time of Ramana. You know, I don't want to make any kind of assumptions about any of the teachers in the past, you know, because I don't know for sure. But it seems like, you know, just like what we've inherited in terms of literature and such. And I'm so grateful, you know, for the lineages. I've benefited incredibly. I feel part of the lineages of the awakened masters. I feel so grateful. We all are part of that. We're all benefiting.
Yes.
And life is creative. It's fully always learning about itself. It's not static. So it's entering into deeper knowing, including knowing that Mother Earth is alive. I mean, there's so many areas where consciousness is going to realize what it is.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, another area where consciousness is entering is, you know, I have a friend who's just always very in tune with animals and the experience of animals. And so, you know, there is a spreading awareness, also a consciousness of the experience of animals, the intelligence of animals, and also the suffering of animals because of the way that we treat them as human beings. You know, it's like consciousness is spreading in so many ways. It's entering, like you say, it's entering so many areas of life on this planet.
And it's like it has different, it's doing it with different beings in different ways too. Like, you know, like you said, some people, and even some people I know, are really taken with the love affair of wanting to help preserve the animal world and take responsibility and to educate people around it and take, you know, well, there can be stickiness there too, right?
Yes,
If we,
it can get
our
very.
identity, yeah,
Yes.
if our identity starts to like latch on to this is who I am, and fear starts to enter, like if we don't do this, then we're, like it can get sticky. But the best aspect of it, the highest aspect of it, and there it is contained within it all, is intelligence, life intelligence saying this too,
Mm.
this too.
Mm-hmm.
I had this beautiful, I just, before our talk here, I took a walk, and, it's fall and it's so gorgeous and stunning with all the leaves. And there was so much squirrel activity, and this one squirrel was scampering around, and I just stopped and paused with this squirrel and started to speak to it in my own made up squirrel language. And the squirrel like came down pretty close and just like was peering at me, and I was peering back at it, and I could feel how there was no separation.
Mm.
The squirrel had its squirrel consciousness and eyes and whatever's going on in that in that body, and there was mine. But what was connecting was the sameness was connecting between, in the middle there and between us. And it was fascinating. Like we were both fascinated with each other until some kind of hypnotic thing happened, and like suddenly squirrel was squirrel again, and I was I, and I walked on. It's like wherever consciousness is paying attention to, that's where it goes. So if it's focusing on this beautiful, um, alive being, or on a tree, or on a feeling, or on a thought, wherever it focuses, that's what it knows itself as.
Mm.
And um, and that's one of the reasons why having a deep sense of spaciousness within, and it creates a beautiful kind of unsticky relationship to things in life.
Mm. Mm. And somehow, that unsticky relationship,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's really the deepening of awakening, isn't it? Because before awakening, there's just sticky relationship. There's like either an identification or a rejection of something. Either it's part of my world, it's it's what I approve of, or what is me, and then there's what I don't approve, what is not approved of, what is not good, what is not okay, and what needs to be resisted. So either way, it's very sticky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sticky because somehow there's just an unconscious living out of this human conditioning, which goes very deep. I mean, this mechanism of either grasping for what we want, or what what feels good, or rejecting what we don't want, what doesn't feel good, what doesn't feel right, what we judge wrong. Um, it just runs all of all of life until there is a dawning of consciousness of how that runs us, how that runs this human being. And then it can become more and more, the consciousness can enter this unconscious sticky acting out of
Mm-hmm.
these these tendencies, this conditioning.
Right. in the midst of all of that, Grace, perhaps you remember, I certainly do remember, and I know that with many people, it's true for them as well, who are perhaps still not unglued or unstuck, from content. Like identity still sticks very easily to what it's paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like inherent in that, there are all these moments of freedom. There's awareness happening regardless, as you know, and there's something that's always noticing within it. Even the sense of being a me is actually a bridge back to awareness, because that's the I am bridge.
Mm.
And that me, that sense of me, is very interesting because it's the same sense as since we were little. Qualities change, we feel like we change, we look different, but there's something that's always the same. And it ties in with that sense of me, the same sense of me-ness. So and then there are all these respites and little holidays from being stuck. I mean, I see, my teens, I don't know, where they're at with it all. It's not my business necessarily, but I see all the time them staring off in space, them being just unencumbered, just being their natural selves, even like just being authentic and real, to me is not so sticky. Just being kind of a spontaneously acting human being, kind of like in the moment, just kind of this fast impulse of being in the moment is that
Yes,
gap
just
is
a
not
spontaneous kind of expression of being.
right, spontaneous, without self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
When self-reflection steps in, that sense of me really gets stronger and gets more sticky. But the spontaneous kind of in the moment, you're driving, you're doing all kinds of things. And even though it seems like we're lost in thought often, really there's so many gaps that exist. And so the only way that freedom, the idea of even freedom, could get in there to want to have, or to even admire the space that a certain type of teacher may have, in satsang or whatever, there has to be enough of a sense there of that space, or wouldn't recognize it.
Yes.
So while all those things you said are true, it's just one aspect of the me story that's going on, the human, kind of caught suffering human story.
Mm-hmm.
So many times with music and dance and all kinds of expressions that are happening, looking at nature, whatever, so many places where that where it just relaxes and it knows it only knows itself again when it comes back from that, so it doesn't realize how many moments there are where absence is really taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we like satsang, is because it's a real holding for that space, and then it's like it makes it aware, it makes it self-aware, that space more self-aware, that's been happening here and there, threading its way throughout your day, throughout your life. And then there's this container that just says, this is what this is about.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just referring to this general movement of the formless into form and forgetting itself in the form.
Yeah, I understand.
And then having to come back to the formless for form to become aware as the formless. And it's such a it's such an internal movement somehow. And my sense is just that some beings are more caught in the form and the stickiness than others. For sure, for everybody, there's moments, moments of freedom, moments of expansion. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a mystery why it happens and when. But I think that we've had another interview before, or not interview, but conversation before, and I think I've touched on this before, and if I haven't, it's just part of what I know to be true within myself, is that everything born returns back to the unborn. Everything that's born out of the unborn, it has a cycle, and then it has a return. It's like a circle. It's a circular thing, and returns back to the unborn nature, and then that comes back out and suffuses itself with more awakeness, more awareness. So there's this trust. There's this inherent kind of trust that everything born has its time, and has its that the divine is contained within it, and everything goes back to itself. Everything goes back to its true nature, and that includes the rising of feeling, coming back to feeling, that rising of sensation, trusting that there's actually intelligence within it all. It's not a mistake.
Yes.
It's not like, just the divine is the unborn, and it enters form to make it known as unborn once again. Actually, there's something there that is a deep mystery, in terms of what is being understood and gained and experienced in the moment. The divine is experiencing itself through us, through us, through that interface of the I. It's experiencing itself, and it's not a mistake. Including the stickiness. Oh, let's go back to that for a minute. Including being lost, including the stickiness. I mean, it's not so fun sometimes in the moment, but it's like there's every step of the way has its truth, has its reality, and has the divine contained within it. And as the return phase starts up, and you start to look again at that whole time of the seeking, let's say just pick the seeking point, you play, thinking that things are outside of ourselves, that what's outside of ourselves is what's going to make us feel whole and complete again. Right? That waking up to that, even though it can be a little painful, and like, how do I do that? How long is the seeking going on? All that stuff. There's actually sort of afterwards, there's like this kind of, like, wow, that was such an amazing, interesting time. That unraveling, the learning that was happening, the discoveries, the unhooking from beliefs. What an incredible, potent time.
Yeah, it's what I love about how you talk about all of this is that there's such a loving inclusion of all of it, all of the divine experience, all of the human experience, because it's ultimately the same. It's nothing's really a problem.
Ultimately. No, it's not. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes,
I mean,
totally divine.
and it's continually revealing itself to itself, like
Mm,
nothing is really a problem.
mm,
Not by necessarily sidestepping the problem. It's just whatever that is, that's the divine right there.
yes.
And that makes it really not a problem.
Hmm.
No more needing to disappear anything. No more needing anything to be different than what it is. Things
Yes.
being just as they are. Ending the argument with what is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Susanne, this feels like a good place to maybe open up the
Sure.
um, the space to questions.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just see. I'm aware of one question here by Mr. Amfontina. Tinya. Um, what happened to your relationship? It takes us in a different direction, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to your relationship with your spiritual guides after awakening?
So this must be somebody who knows a little bit about my past story. And probably from some other interview, Buddha at the gas pump or something, I spoke about having been a mystic. So, um, so what happens to my relationship with the guides that used to really inform me in my life? I'm guessing. Is that what he's saying? What happened? What happened? Yeah. What happens?
Mm-hmm.
So when I had this when my brother died 14 years ago, um, prior to his death, I was a very mystically oriented person. In that I was being guided quite a bit by beings that some of you all know the names of, like spiritual beings like Neem Karoli Baba came, and Amachi. It's been a part of my life for 25 years, and and some other beings too. And I would have dreams and visions, and in my meditations oftentimes would be guided by different beings. And it was supportive to me, very supportive to me in my life. And my kids were at that point really little still. And then my brother died, and I cut all ties for a while. Just on a certain level with these different beings, and asked them to leave me alone. And immediately they all left me alone and didn't enter my dream time or come to me anymore. And I was left with the starkness of reality as it is, without the buffer of these beautiful beings who I believe really do exist. And but I needed to cut the ties, because I think it was part of, in retrospect, part of the spiritual development and evolution, to not be relying on anything outside of myself, which is really not even true. It's not really outside of myself. But at the time, to really be in the deconstruction mode and learn how to be with what is, the reality as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an emptying out process. It was a time of deeply, deeply going into emptiness. And that took me down for a couple of years, seriously, where things got emptied out. And then slowly I started to realize that hang on, these spiritual beings, they're not separate from me. When the oneness came back in to reclaim itself, it wasn't just the stark emptying out, but the re-entry that we've been talking about this whole time started to come in. I had this feeling like, well, everything's included. Of course everything's included. And that includes these beings. And
Mm.
so I made an invitation, a formal invitation, and I went back to see Amma, and I have for me, I have a beautiful relationship with Amma in my heart, and but it's not been the same. I've had some beautiful touchstones with some of these beings, and I know that they're real, and I know they're here, and I know that if I call on them, they're here. These realms exist. There's no separation between anything in reality. And so now that there's this sense that everything is really one thing, it's just there's not this need in the same way to be saved. Let's put it that way, to be saved. So my relationship is one of utmost respect, of love, of deep appreciation and awe, in a way, of the capacities that they have, and gratitude, deep gratitude that they're here helping as they are, humanity.
Yes, actually, what you describe is very similar to what Gangaji said in the conversation I had with her about the guru-disciple relationship. Which is that somehow the true relationship ultimately that's actually quite beautiful, and there is a lot of gratitude, for the guidance that has been given, for the just the presence of a true teacher. Whether in the body or not in the body doesn't really make that much difference, does it?
No, not at all.
And what it does also, she said, and I felt that was quite interesting, is that there's also a humility that naturally arises, just a gratitude and a humility, a true humility, a humility that is aware of the beauty of beings that were so purely devoted to what they were teaching, so that they're still available, they're available to so many beings. And at a human level, that's just such an expression of love, such an expression.
Absolutely. Love returning back for itself.
Yes.
In all of us.
So I just want to say, Jenna, I saw you coming into the Hangout. You're very welcome to ask a question to Susanne. I just needed to come to, allow this question to come to a conclusion. So please feel free to come back in if you can. Meanwhile, Eric says, love your authenticity and open-heartedness, Susanne. I so appreciate what you're sharing.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thanks for saying that. It touches me.
Yes.
It's so beautiful when we give each other feedback, because that's how we see one another. It's through each other's eyes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's another question on the YouTube comment thread by Layla. How do you know when you have reached the point of going it alone without a guru, and that it is not coming from your ego?
So that it's time to be on one's own,
Yes.
rather than be with a guru.
Like you shared that there was this point when you just needed to let go of the guidance and the guides, and just be be in the emptiness yourself. Let everything go that you were still reaching out to.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think that comes almost everyone, whether it's, whether we believe in other lives or just this life, but at some point it's going to arise that quote that's been attributed to Buddha, be a light unto yourself, is going to be taking place.
Mm.
And so this inner kind of potentiality of knowing what it needs for itself starts to emerge. It starts to birth within, and it's a beautiful thing when it happens. And it's not necessarily where ties need to be severed, although sometimes they can look like that. With me, for instance, when I told those teachers to take a hike. But it's like it comes up in different ways. With I studied with Adyashanti after I had this big awakening thing happen, and there was a time for me to move away on my own, also within that. And he even gave me his blessing to do so. A good teacher will do that. Good,
yes.
In my mind, my opinion of what to me was a good teacher is, you're done here. And part of the habit body may still want to do that. Like I would still from time to time go and be with the Sangha, because the relationships get built. It's not just the guru, it's not just the guidance, it's not just this love affair with the teacher and with the lineage that they hold, because there's a transmission that comes through this lineage. But it's also the Sangha, the richness and the human fulfillment that happens through being with like-minded others. And sometimes I went and just walked on my own. I moved from the area I was in with the Adyashanti Sangha. This was like 9 years ago, and I just went on my own, and there was so much growth and learning that happened through just sort of, in a way, severing ties, but also just having them kind of melt organically too. Some aloneness came up, not loneliness, but maybe a little bit, but more aloneness, standing in one's own aloneness.
Yes.
And this, the deepening of awakening really starts to take hold then. When it's not relying, it's just this right moment to do it too, this right moment. And how do you know that? The question itself, to me, means that there is inquiry into it for you. What is her name? The person's name again?
Layla or Lila.
Lila. That means to me that there's an inquiry already in regards to it, and the question wouldn't really be there. It wouldn't be an alive question for you if there wasn't some uncording happening. These cords that we, in good ways and in ways that are also dependent on our teacher, they start to get uncorded. And some of them drop off on their own, and some of them just need a real just cutting. Sometimes the teacher sees it in you, and it's a blessing if they see that in a way. And sometimes life will orchestrate it so that there's less, you're getting less out of being around that person, and life starts directing you in a different direction. So I would just listen to all the signposts and feel into your own inner body and your own being, and kind of like sit with what's true. Just kind of ask yourself, what's really true here? And is my being with my teacher still a matter of dependence, or is there still really, is this still what's supposed to be happening? Because there's still lots and lots of learning happening. And it doesn't mean you can't go back sometime and touch in or get a teaching. It just means that everyone in the end needs to get weaned from that which they think is giving them who they are. Who you are is right here. What you are is right here. What they are is the same. So any dependence on that, after a while, it's going to be coming back. It's going to be weaned.
Yes, thank you. And maybe I'll just share my own experience too with my teacher Gangaji. after a few years, there was really a sense of, just needing to find my own ways of living this. Almost like needing to find my own language, because when one is with a teacher, of course, one adopts their language, their concepts, their ways of kind of speaking about things. And there was just a very clear sense that I needed to find how to live this in my life. And and trust, trust that if I felt there was more distance, I did get less out of being in satsang with her, that was as it needed to be. And it becomes very obvious. But that's my sense. And there's a clarity in that that's very different from an ego that says, oh, I'm done with that teacher just because there's some annoyance or some kind of, I got to do it on my own now. And the clarity is very different.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. It reminds me of one more thing here, that it was the obviousness of I didn't have the same juice. It didn't hold the same fascination anymore to be going in and listening.
Yes.
And it had nothing to do with them or the value of their teaching. It had to do something that was cooked. It has to do with the ripeness, the type of ripeness that starts to occur.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so now I'm going to bring on Jenna, who's joined us in the Hangout. Jenna, I'm going to try and show you. There you are. Can you unmute yourself? Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Susanne.
Hi,
nice
Jenna.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sweetie.
So I did not expect you to hit exactly on my experience at the current moment. You're talking a lot about the rejection of form. Once you feel an affinity toward the formless, and then that almost leads to a rejection of form. And that's been my experience recently. But this retreat actually is helping me to not reject that rejection because, that goes in a whole spiral and, gets crazy. So, and a lot of what you said has actually helped break through that opposite extreme. But I was wondering if you had any further advice on how to overcome the, I guess, rejection of the material and the form.
Okay. Well, I feel your vulnerability in this. It's probably not just the being, speaking here and the publicness of it, but also I can feel the trace of vulnerability of entering into something that wants to be entered into, and the sweetness of that, the sweetness of allowing again the love to go towards an aspect of itself that it's been denying, pushing away, and it has its right time, right, to go and discover what the formless is, and then just the obviousness of when the right time is to re-enter and re-embrace itself, aspects of itself. It's this love affair, this love that wants to come back and fall in love with everything that it wants to know about itself now. What is this? Who am I? Who am I within this form? What am I? Who am I within the form? Not just as the formless, but within the form. Sinking into that and letting the sensations of even if it's a cascade of sensations at first, because it's been kind of, anything that's been denied is going to have kind of an avalanche effect in a way, right? And just know that that's all really natural, and it's part of it. Eventually, things will settle down to where you'll be able to, look at things maybe one thing at a time. But at first, it kind of feels like this waterfall of like so much at once, a lot arising.
Definitely. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that.
What else? Is there something more in that?
What do you mean?
Does that feel like, does that response help you?
Yeah. I mean, it's also becoming comfortable with what does arise. And even if it's overwhelming or anything like that, it's learning not to be scared of it or reject it and just embrace it for what it is. And
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. It takes a learning. You're onto a new adventure. You're onto yourself in a new way, and it's a type of intelligence that has to learn, get the hang of it, the swing of it, and just know that you're heading in exactly the right direction. That whatever you can say yes to that's heading in the right direction.
well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you. You can unpackage yourself now, the present that you are. The rest of your present, the all of you. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll just add to this that, it's been so much part of the spiritual journey to distance oneself from the physical, material, emotional, embodied life. That the coming back to it is scary, and there's so much that keeps us at a distance. So it's actually, it's very courageous to say, okay, I'm just going to open to all of it. But when you do, it's so delicious, it's so beautiful, it's so precious. I mean, there's so, it shows up in so many different forms, and it shows up in so many different flavors and so many different ways. It's a celebration, I mean, ultimately, it's just, the formless celebrating itself in all that is. And it's just, it's a real discovery, that we don't have to be afraid. We can actually trust it. We can enjoy it. And we can just be in awe of it, because it's all so amazing.
And you will get more skilled over time. More skilled. Just like with anything, you get the hang of something. So, yeah, there are teachings out there. There are ways to be able to get any support that you could, if you feel like you could use it. Because just like learning a language, sometimes we can use some help. It's a new language. And your willingness and your courage, as Grace says, and now gaining more trust with it through this online retreat, where you hear different people saying the same thing in different ways, maybe, or some people. But this is the right direction to go in for you. And you can trust that. It's totally part of God. It's the full circle of what God is. It's a re-embrace. And lucky so nice and young, and you get to do that. 60 or 70. It's always the right time, but yeah.
See, that's really what it is to awaken to love, is to realize you can love it all, you know, really everything.
And feel free to drop me a line if you want and just let me know how it's going.
Yeah, thank you. I will take you up on it.
Yeah, I just gain an interest in people and wondering how they're doing. If you feel called.
Yeah, thank you.
Be well.
Yes. Courage. Thank you, Jenna. Sebastian, I'm not sure we're going to have time to bring you on because I want to take another question from the YouTube thread.
I think I might know who Sebastian is, actually.
Okay, so the question is by Paul McDonald. Do you ever find that you have to develop a kind of discipline of your mind in order to maintain your state of awakening? And actually, Paul says, in answering Leila's question, you addressed my question. But I just have a sense that that is a good question anyway. So shall I repeat it for you?
Yes, please. And we still have Jenna online. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that you have to develop a kind of discipline of your mind in order to maintain your state of awakening?
No. Not anymore. It hasn't been that way for a good while. There was a natural deconstruction that happened back 10 years ago when emptiness really came and dissolution process really happened, and there was this natural, I don't know if it was really a discipline, but it was a very yawny experience of the mind undoing itself. The mind was using itself as a tool to undo itself. It was a very yawny kind of path that I was spontaneously on. And I'm actually quite a bhakti as well. But it's just kind of like what happened. This movement of the mind waking up to itself is how I put it. And the discipline came spontaneously and naturally to want to look at everything that was coming up to be looked at. Is that true? Is that really true? And as it entered into deeper seeing, it would see that that something was not even true, and this freedom would come. It would happen over and over and over with different aspects, including language, including even words. But now there's no more discipline. What happens at some point is that the mind it just stops trying to find itself within itself. It stops trying to locate itself within itself, and so then that process it just like some kind of spring happens, and it's released, and mind is free from wanting to find itself, to locate itself, to find understanding, to want to understand, to know what it is. So it just kind of springs free, and once that happens, mind is not a problem anymore. And so, that doesn't mean that thoughts don't happen and that maybe beliefs about things don't happen, but this natural kind of harmonizing process occurs where it still continues to unravel and undo itself over time, because there's still more and more things that are saying, what about this? Is this God too? Is this it too? And so whatever beliefs may be around that gets sprung free just by being willing to look at it. And it's not some, I don't know if it's a discipline, but it's more, what's his name again?
Paul.
I don't know if it's so much a discipline as a earnestness. You know what Nisargadatta speaks of too, about how earnestness is the key. I was really loving the book I Am That way back then, 10 years ago, when this Yanni thing was happening. And that is kind of a discipline, you know. It's like, I would say that discipline as a quality was here. Not mine, but here. Discipline was here, and that earnestness was the kind of like the byproduct. And it was just, but it was a spontaneously arising discipline. It wanted to really know itself. It wanted to go the full mile. It didn't want to stop. It didn't want to give up for anything. It was, you know, caught the bug bad kind of thing. You know, just that is a type of discipline, but it wasn't something I was creating separation within myself, as if there's discipline and then there's myself, and that in order to achieve something, I'm going to do something. It was discipline arose organically. So that's what I would suggest for anybody in terms of practices or disciplines or anything, which I find incredibly valuable at the right time, is just use your own inner knowing, that the choiceless one choosing. Have the choiceless one choose, and it knows what it needs. It knows what it needs at the right time. And so there. Yeah. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Yes, I you know, maybe I'll just add to this, and that's why I wanted to take that question, because, you know, sometimes some teachers talk about being vigilant about what the mind gets up to, you know, the identification that may happen. And that can sound like there's an effort that's needed, but actually it's something that just arises out of a love of truth, out of a love of what is real, and what, you know, and to be clear about what is real and what isn't in comparison. And so it's not a discipline that's imposed. It's a rigor. Maybe rigor is a good word. It's a rigor that arises in, you know, by itself.
Nice. Yeah, by itself.
Like you say, it's a choiceless choice. It arises. Yeah. We're kind of past the time, but I would like to. I'm sorry, Sebastian. We're not going to get to you. But
is Sebastian, he can hear us right now?
Yes, he can.
Hi, Sebastian. Yes. Sorry about this. I can see you nodding down in the corner.
Yeah.
Feel free to write me a question if you have one, okay? Feel free to write it, and you can do it through my website. If you feel called, I'm happy to connect with you and see if there's an answer here for whatever it is that you're wanting to know.
Well, let me just ask Sebastian, do you have a short question, or is it a long question? You have to unmute yourself, Sebastian.
On top. The unmute.
Yeah, you know, at the black bar at the top. I can't seem to unmute him.
I can't do it, right?
No, you can't do it. I think he has to.
You move your cursor and you can see it on top.
You know, maybe it's just not meant to happen.
That's okay. So it is. Yeah.
So it is.
If the question stays alive, then you can let me, you know, contact me.
So the question by Angarad Wilson, what's the role of psychotherapy when one realizes the non-reality of the egoic self, and how does this realization tie into spiritual bypassing?
Is it possible for Sebastian to write the question, or is it too late for even that? Anyway, I'll answer this.
We can't take both questions.
Okay. Okay. So, what's the role of psychotherapy? Repeat it.
What's the role of psychotherapy when one realizes the non-reality of the egoic self? And how does this realization tie into spiritual bypass?
Yeah, I'll just take the first part of it. Well, I don't know. It depends on what you're needing and wanting in any certain moment. If you have really realized that there's no me, that there's no you in the center of all experience, and if you still feel that there's work to be had that you could use help with, and have a therapist to support you and their wisdom and their intelligence of help guide if something's still needing unraveling. Because sometimes we have traumas, and sometimes we have different aspects that are still needing support. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming, and it's nice to have a support. And I would like to give a plug-in for that as well. Not only like body work and but different types of therapies, and you know that could include psychotherapy. I think there are even some non-dual psychotherapists that are practicing out there, and they probably could answer better than I could in that. But I just think it's individual, and if you feel the need, like the desire, and you go, and it's either supportive or not, you can decide. It's not like everything drops away automatically just because there's been a deep, deep seeing of the truth of your nature. These aspects of self that are still perhaps wanting that loving attention that we've been speaking to for the last hour and a half, sometimes they can feel the contraction around them can be really strong. And I don't just assume that everyone can do that on their own. And sometimes we need support, and that's what the role can be of psychotherapy. And what was that second part of the question? Was spiritual bypassing?
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
Yes. But Susanne, I just managed to bring Sebastian on.
Okay.
So why don't you just answer his question quickly?
Great. Okay.
Well, thank you, Grace.
Okay. Hi, Sebastian.
Hi, Susanne. Actually, I'm aware about Grace's maybe preoccupation about time and stuff. So I especially don't want to abuse of this. so I want to, if I have the opportunity to say hello now, I'm taking this chance, and so I'd be happy to maybe do it some other time, only with you, just to respect the case of this of this retreat. So
Well, it's very, very thoughtful of you. And Grace, do we have a moment, or do you want to just leave it at that and go on? I'll respect the time that you are wanting.
Yeah, I mean, time's really moving on.
Okay. Sebastian, nice to meet you. And
nice to meet you.
yeah, really. And so, yeah, we'll just see what happens if there's a question there.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your just your heart.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you, Grace, as well.
Yes. Thank you, Sebastian. Sorry about that, but you know, things are just getting a bit too squashed.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, something I noticed, Grace, with satsang, and like when I had a question for a teacher or something in the past, or just something, and if it wouldn't happen, it was like, actually, sometimes it was just the right thing, you know? I don't know why that happens sometimes, but sometimes it's the right thing to just be with oneself some more in regards to something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. Yeah. So we can trust the fact that we get called, and we can trust the fact that we don't get called.
Yeah. And I just feel touched by all the beautiful souls that I'm meeting today, and I can feel all the beautiful souls that are on, who may be watching.
Mm.
Really touched. It's a self-nourishing kind of experience. It's not individual. It's individual and it's collective.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Susanne. Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you,
For
Grace.
joining. Thank you for continuing that exploration of that theme of what it means to awaken as love, and how feelings come into this. How all of it finally is embraced fully.
Absolutely.
And Susanne, you spoke to that so beautifully, and I really want to thank you for bringing your way of seeing this and speaking about it, because it really added something very fresh and very clear to the other teachers. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored to be a part of this online retreat and be connecting with all of you.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Grace, can I just add just a small comment?
Yes, go ahead.
So, I just want to thank you, Canella, for the new color you kind of have added in this the palette of this retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this more this human side you're bringing, as well as Canada, I felt like brought as well. I feel like it answers some questions that were like maybe lost, a little bit too much into abstraction and into ideas of trying to put ourselves into the oneness and observe things, and this distance. I feel like it's a kind of a reconciliation with. It's the opportunity to be in reconciliation with my humanity in some ways. So it kind of opened this door. So I want to say I'm very grateful about that.
Yes.
I love that word.
Go ahead.
I love that word, reconciliation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, it's a beautiful word. And, I suggest that you write to Canella about this, because I'm not sure that she's watching this session. So I just want to thank everybody again. Thank you, Susanne. Thank you to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the last session of this retreat, which is just the closing session, which is a short meditation, and we can continue. People can come on to the Hangout and share their questions, share their comments. You're very welcome to do that. Mm-hmm. So that will take place in about 10 minutes. Until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for being on this retreat. Thank you, Susanne, again.
Thank you, Grace,
for your beautiful presence. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.